Gives everybody a chance to kind of get on and log on and stuff. So
Don't hang up that phone. We've found what you're looking for. Welcome to the Let's Talk Cabling Podcast with Chuck Bowser, RCDD. Well, seeing how we're pulling Category 6A, the most powerful twisted pair in the world, you got to ask yourself this one question. Did I pull 295 or 300 feet? Well, do you feel lucky? Do you, punk? What exactly does RCDD stand for? Registered Communications Distribution Designer. Just the expert you need to ensure your cable plant performs exactly as designed. The elite professional, knowledgeable, and experienced in leading-edge ICT design principles. Now, send the new guy to the truck for a bucket of dial tone and the cable stretchers, while you listen to an informative program on telecommunications.
Wednesday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That can only mean one thing. Live after hours with your favorite RCDD, Chuck Bowser. You know it's me. Come on, be honest. You know I'm your favorite RCDD. Tonight, we're talking project management. You know, when I created the show for tonight, when I created not when I say create, I mean did it in Restream and got it all set up. After I'd already submitted, I was like, man, I should have put in there that tonight's show was about project management because there's a lot of interest in project management in this industry. And the funny thing is, Wire for Action is already answering, what are you drinking? The thing about project managers in our industry, we really suck at project management. Now, I don't necessarily mean you suck at project management, but when you look at the industry as a whole, we're notorious for promoting a good technician to be a project manager, a good technician who has great hands-on skills and knows the codes and standards, to a position of, now they need to be good with Excel and Word and project management programs and computer skills and communications. They're not so good at that sometimes. And to add another layer of complexity on top of that, I know what the definition of project manager is, but in our industry, a lot of times, especially with your smaller companies, we have a tendency to give lead techs, foreman, the title of project manager, and then not really have them do anything project management with, because they need to bump them up to get into the next salary range, but they're not managing schedules. They're not managing material budgets. They're not managing labor budgets. They're not managing risk, which is what project managers do. Project managers really should not be pulling and terminating cable. I said it. If you disagree with me, put it in the chat box. If you disagree with me, project managers should not be pulling cable. Their job, hey Josh, how you doing? Their whole gig is to manage not just one project, but multiple projects. A good project manager is going to be managing anywhere from, I don't know, 1 to 6 or 7 projects at a time. And each of those will be at different stages of the game. That's why they don't need to be out in the field working. I digress. I forgot to, let's start the show with, what are you drinking? So I got my, hey, Wire for Excellence, I got my Milwaukee cup with my Let's Talk Cabling stickers on there, right? Tonight I am drinking water with lemon and lime essential oil drops. And I'll tell you why. About a year ago, I got kidney stones. I wouldn't wish kidney stones on my worst enemy. Kidney stones are horrible, man. Horrible. They're extremely painful. So Wire for Action says he's drinking Yahoo. Let me see. What are people drinking here? Right? Never miss. Can I say, hope you learn before I get my. Oh, very good, ZD. I appreciate that. Let's put that up on the screen. I love when I get comments like these. He said, hey, Chuck, I found your site and hope to learn a lot before you get your RCDD. Let me ask you this, ZD. When do you plan on getting your RCDD? Let me ask you that question. So again, that's the first question. What do you drink? Because we always start it every once in a while. We do that, but we also do the acronym challenge. So let's do the acronym challenge for tonight's show. The acronym for tonight's show is RTPM. 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 What does that mean? What does that mean? RTPM. I'll give you a couple seconds. It has to do with tonight's show. RTPM. Joe Louise is drinking Diet Coke. So Houston Harris says while he agrees they shouldn't be in the field, they should at least have the knowledge of how the trade works. I agree with that 100%. Wire for Excellence says, "You sure the Milwaukee Caps aren't stopping those kidney stones?" There you go, Daryl. The RCDD got it. He says registered telecommunications project manager. Right. So that's a certification that you can get for project management in the low voltage industry that's offered by Bixby. That's not the only one. There are other project management certifications you can get, and probably the most well-known one is from PMI, Project Management Institute. They have this certification called the PMP certification, Project Management Professional. It is like, from what I hear, because I've never taken the test, but I know people who have. From what I understand, it's as hard as getting your RCDD. So, it has the same recognition as an RCDD. And that's what I was talking about earlier. Our industry is horrible about project managers and giving them the title, but yet they don't actually do the stuff. Right. So acronym test. Oh, motivational minute. Motivational minute. I'm skipping that this week because I totally messed it up. Yes. So did you catch the show this week? I did on Monday night. Hey, let me know. I want your opinion. So I got 20 people in TikTok. I've got about 10 or 15 people right now in the other platforms. I want research question. Because right now I currently publish the show on Monday nights. Do you think I should change it so it publishes out Monday morning instead of Monday nights? Let me know, yes or no. Do you think I should do Monday mornings or Monday night? You get a chance to help shape the podcast right now by putting your answer in the chat box. Yes. So Monday's show, the one that just passed, I did about a 25-minute show on non-mechanical fire stop systems, and I talked in depth about the benefits and disadvantages to putty, caulk, cementitious material, and all that other stuff. And I think on the tail end, I tagged in on mechanical systems a little bit as well, right? So somebody says, depends on where you want people to listen to it. So here's the thing. When I publish it out to the podcast on Mondays, it automatically downloads to their phone. So I don't know when they listen to it. I just know that how many people download it. So let me see. What are we saying over here in the chat box? Anybody have any suggestions over here? Oh, look, we had another person who got the, Brandon got the registered technology project manager. That's close. It's telecommunications. I'll give you 10,000 points for being close. And some ZD's replying back. You start reading those massive manuals. That's one of them right there. This week, maybe around April 2025. Zeb is my name. Sorry for this. Oh, no problem, Zeb. Not a problem. So yeah, that's good. So here's my tip to you, Zeb. Go ahead and apply to sit for the exam. Pay for the exam. So now you're locked in, and that's going to force you to read through that book and do what I did. My RC study program. It's based on reading 70 pages a week. 70 pages a week. That's only 10 pages a day. You can read 10 pages a day and easily comprehend that. So do that 70 pages a week. You'll get through it. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay, please feel free to reach out to me. Let's get on to our project management questions. Do I have any advice for anybody who wants to lather up with mayo and sit in a water heater closet? Don't use Miracle Whip. Don't use mayonnaise. That's my advice. So the first question is, how can I effectively manage stakeholder expectations in an ICT project? And I'm sorry, I apologize because I did not write down who sent these to me. So, what is a stakeholder? Let's talk about that first. A stakeholder is anybody who has skin in the game on that project. It could be the techs out there pulling the cable, the project manager, the owner of the company. It might be the salespeople at the gray bar, or the annexer. It obviously is going to be the customer. If it's a new construction site, it could be the GC, the electricians, all that. That's what a stakeholder is. So when I talk about how to manage stakeholder expectations, you got to follow what I call the 4 C's, right? The 4 C's. Write this down: clear, concise, and continuous communications. I'll say that again: clear, concise, and continuous communications. And start from day one, right? Anytime you send communications to the customer, whether it's a letter or email, make sure that it's straight to the point, easily understandable, and you're always staying in contact with that customer. And again, you start that from day one. The first step is make sure that you have the right contact information for the for this thing. Clear, concise, and continuous communication. 10,000 points at the beard of knowledge. Yes, yes. So yeah, make sure you have the right contact information for the stakeholders. Usually there's some type of a kickoff meeting. You sit down, get their business card. I love the dot things because you can scan them and it puts them in your phone automatically. Less chance of misspelling somebody's name or something like that. Now, here's some tools to help you with that clear, concise, and continuous communications. Number one, have a project plan, right? A project plan from day one. And in the project plan, you want to include the timelines. Okay, on this day, we will mobilize and get on the job site. This day, we will start pulling cable. This day, we'll start terminating. This day, we'll start testing. This day, final cutover. Also, make sure in that project plan that you tell them what the deliverable is. Now, a lot of times, projects will have a formal request for proposal, request for quote, and what will happen is it'll have those deliverables in there. But a lot of projects really are generated from a customer calling you, say, hey, I need you to come out and do some work, where you do the walk-in. There is no formal RFP. So in that project plan, put in the deliverables. We will install, 110 duplex work area outlets. The voice will be category 5E. The data will be Cat 6. They will be certified with a fluke tester or an AEM or softing certifier, right? And then so that way, and we will provide those test results. We will provide as-built and red lines on the completion of the project. So that way, you clearly identify what those deliverables are. So that way, you help meet those customers' expectations. And then another tool. A lot of project managers miss this one. Regular updates. Yes, you heard me. Regular updates. Do weekly status reports. Weekly status reports. And that status report should talk about what progress was made that week. You could say, oh, this week we pulled, 35 work area. We pulled 35 work area outlets, dropped them down, and received material, blah, 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 blah. And then also in that weekly status report, share what are the next steps and actions that are going to happen. What's going to happen next week? Next week, we anticipate that we'll pull another 35 stations and blah, 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 blah. And the reason you want to talk about what you want to do next week is that it kind of ties in with the third thing that should be in that weekly status report. Proactively identify anything that causes you to not work efficiently, right? So, for example, let's say that you're working on a new construction site, and this new construction site, they have an elevator dedicated solely to just the construction workers. And let's say the elevator breaks down. Well, now, instead of using the elevator to take the 50,000 feet of cable up to the 10th story, you got to literally walk them up the steps. That's time that was not estimated in the bid. So if you put in your weekly status report that next week you anticipate doing 35 drops. So in the next week, you can say, look, this week we only got 15 drops done. But the reason for that was because the construction elevators broke it down. It took us a day and a half to get the cable up to the floor. Because when you document that in a weekly status report, that sets the foundation for a change order. Okay. Now you're not going to hit it. You may not hit change order for just one blockage. You might if it's big enough, but but if you start documenting those blockages, when you get enough in there, you'll start to see a pattern where they can come back to customers and say, "Look, man, we have a lot of downtime on this project that was not estimated in the bid." Daryl says Microsoft Teams on 365 has been a game changer in customer communications. Absolutely, love Microsoft Teams. And then the last one is listen as part of communications, listening to the stakeholder and the customer. Listen to what they say. Not only do you listen, you document it. And I suggest, like if you're in a meeting with a customer, you send some type of communications back to that stakeholder. Say, look, per our walkthrough on a job site today, these are the things that we discussed. I just want to confirm I understand correctly. Send it off. Boom. Documentation. And I have a list of 147 pro tips on my website. Pro tip number 1 is document, document, document. Yeah, exactly. Question number 2, Chuck, what are some key considerations when selecting vendors for an ICT project? Now, what happens is sometimes when you get awarded a project, you might have to subcontract other people. You might not be able to do fiber, so you might subcontract somebody to do the fiber for you, or you might not do outside plant. You might be subcontracting electricians to put in conduit, or maybe the bonding and grounding, or maybe putting in receptacles in the inside of the racks or the cabinets. So what does that mean, right? So how do you select the best contractor? Well, number one, there's a couple of areas you really want to look at. Well, number one, cost, quality of service, experience in the industry, and scalability. Let's start off with cost. Now, don't let cost really kind of drive you. Don't necessarily pick the cheapest person. You want to choose the contractor that checks all the boxes, and then once you get them down to just 2 or 3, then you can start comparing costs. This is a small industry, right? A small industry. You're going to know what other people's prices are. You also want to pick a contractor that has a good quality service. Now, this is a small industry. If you start hiring electricians from your local area or other contractors, you've probably already come across them on other projects. They've already got a reputation. So you know if they're good or not, right? Daryl, the RCDD, says, I interview subcontractors to verify they are what they say they are. It's easy to oversell on paper. 100% agree with that. 100% agree. And I'll talk about how to solve that. Are they right? Are they the right size to do the work? Right? The right size to do the work. Right. So George Humphrey says trunk slammers. Yes, stay away from trunk slammers. Right. If you're just doing a project where you're only putting in, let's say you're hiring a outside plant contractor because you don't do outside plant work. If you're only putting one outside plant cable between 2 buildings, that company doesn't have to be very big to do that. But if you're doing a campus where they're doing multiple fibers, multiple copper cables between multiple buildings, you may not necessarily want to use, like George Humphrey says, a trunk slammer, right? A trunk slammer. So make sure that they're of the right size to do that work. Do they have enough people to do that work, right? And do they have enough people that are qualified and certified to do that work? It's okay to ask, like Daryl probably knows this. It's okay to ask, hey, what kind of certifications do your people have? Do you have Bixby installers or technicians or anybody in your company have OSP certifications? It is okay to ask that. And it's okay. Who was it that said this? Somebody tell me in the chat box. There's a famous quote. It's trust, but verify. Trust, but verify. I think it's attributed to Colin Powell, but I'm not 100% positive on that. Right. And then also make sure when you're choosing the subcontractor work for you, make sure that they will participate in your project management style. Okay. Now the reason for that is, if you're going to be managing material and labor and schedule, there's a lot of companies out there that just, okay, their project management style is it in yet? Are you done yet? That's their project management style. If the subcontractor is at their style and you are a RTPM or PMP, that's going to cause you headaches. So make sure they participate in that. Is that company financially stable? Stable. Again, void the trunk slammers. All right. Because if they go out of business in the middle of a project, now as a project manager, that's going to impact your schedule. You're going to have to start the whole process over again and go find another subcontractor and start over from scratch one. And that's a lot of headaches that you as a project manager really don't need to do. And Daryl, here's the thing for yours. Check the references. Follow up on the references. When you solicit prices from subcontractors, have them give you 3 references, 5 references, whatever the case may be. And make sure that you go visit some of their projects. Talk to their customers. Tell them, look, when you submit your references, these have to be people that I'm gonna be calling, and I may want to go to their job site and see what your work is like. And here's a beautiful thing. When you start working with some subcontractors, let's say there's an outside plant contractor that you use, right? And if once they've done 5 or 6 or 7 projects for you, you don't have to go through the check references anymore because you already know because they've worked 6 or 7 projects with you. Right? There you go. Then you know that they're going to be good. And here's another one. A lot of people don't think about this. If ABC Electrical wants to do the outside plant work for you and you never heard of them before, call your local gray bar, call your local annexer, or reach out to your salesperson within distribution and say, "Hey, have you heard of this company?" And if you don't, have them ask around. Distribution knows a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Daryl, the RCDD says, also, are they bondable? Was a big one in this formal life. Oh, yeah, that's a big one. Gosh. Because a lot of times you have to get a bond out for your work. Question number 3 says, how do I ensure that my ICT project stays within budget? Stays within budget. Remember, I told you that's one of the things that a project manager does to make sure that they're within the material budget and the labor budget. Well, first is you got to know where that goal line is. You have to know where if you're playing baseball, you know that you got to go first, second, third, and then come back to home. If you're in football, you know you got to go to the goal line. You know where that goal is. Well, what's the goal for a project? It's the price in the estimate, right? Now, many project managers miss this. So what is the total amount of labor hours in the project? What's the total labor cost in the budget? Because sometimes hours and costs can kind of fluctuate depending on how that bid was estimated. If the estimator estimated it with, higher end people, the price will be higher, but the hours will be lower. But come time to do the project, let's say that you don't have those type of people available. So you got mid-level or maybe even entry level. Well, their per hour cost will be cheaper, but it's going to take them more hours. So you have to be able to do those calculations, right? And here's an important one. This is one of the things. This is why the RTPM was in my acronym challenge for tonight. Was the work broken down in a work breakdown structure, a WBS? Maybe I should do a show on that. I'm gonna write that down. Hold on 1 second. This might be a show I'm gonna have to record and put out there. WBS, how to create, what is it, and how do you do it? What is there we go. There you go. There's my note. It's a future show. Boom, right there. Now when that show comes out, you can say, hey, I was there when Chuck thought of how to do that. Right. So yeah, work breakdown structures. I'm not gonna dive into tonight with what it is because I'm already at 6:22 and I'm only on question 3 of like 8 questions. Right. So there you go. Also, use project management software to be able to track. Now, there's lots of them out there. There's some estimating packages have a project management package attached to it. You can also buy standalone software or subscribe to standalone software, project management software like Monday.com or ClickUp. There's other ones too, like MS Project and some other ones. And there's also some companies that will build their own project management software based off of their own internal systems. I used to work for a company in Dallas, Texas, and they had a project management program that their own IT developed, and they called it Hermes. Hermes, not herpes. Hermes, Hermes. It's some kind of a Greek god or something, right? Keep that your project information updated and make sure that it's accurate because garbage in, garbage out. Garbage in, garbage out. And also make sure you keep a constant eye on that. Right? Look at your budgets. Try to look at them at minimum, at least weekly. Weekly. Shotzi's in the house. Hello, Shotzi. Um, yeah, make sure, because if you don't watching that weekly, then you're gonna have some problems, right? Somebody says, couldn't a Gantt chart do the breakdown and track? So Gantt charts most of the time are built off work breakdown structures. So that's a good point, right? John Bowser's in the house. He says, document, document, document. Yes. K-Man, no more Thursday nights. No, I changed it from Thursday nights to Wednesday nights. I don't do Thursday nights anymore. Just some internal home kind of stuff's going on that I got to really work out with. So I moved the live stream to Wednesday nights now. Wednesday night, 6 p.m. But they're recorded and you can watch them at any time you want. Okay. Next question. Let me pull up on my list here. Chuck, what are some of the most common risks in ICT projects and how can I mitigate them? So a risk is something that could potentially happen on a project that could cause you time and material that wasn't estimated in a project. So probably the four most common risk areas for a project: scope creep, technology failures like equipment that's dead on arrival, resource shortages. We went through that with COVID not too long ago, and changes in regulatory requirements, like what your local authority having jurisdiction might want. So those are the four major areas that you really got to watch out for. So for risk assessment, the first thing you want to do is at the very, very beginning of the project, you want to conduct and identify all potential issues, all potential risks, and come up with a plan of how to mitigate that risk. I'll give you an example. Did a project one time. I was living in the DC area. I knew that I was going to get awarded the project within a week or two once I submitted for bid, if they accepted my bid. And I knew that one of the suppliers that I was going to be buying material from was from Central Ohio. And I knew that they just got hit with a huge storm, like 14 inches. Well, guess what? At the very beginning of the project, I identified that risk. What happens if my common carrier can't get there to pick up that stuff, that equipment, to bring it back to Virginia? That was an impact, a potential impact. So what you do is you assign a dollar value to that, and you roll that in and a percentage of the chance of that happening. And there's a math formula that goes through all this. Again, take a project management class. Pixie has some good ones. And it'll help you figure that out. So that way, if it does happen, you have those costs in there. And that's all going to be identified in that risk management plan, right? It's going to tell you, here's the strategy for doing it. If it snows, okay, here's a secondary supplier that I can use instead of the first one, even though the price might be a little bit more. But here's the workaround if that happens. Because if you think about what can happen, you're already a step ahead of any kind of problem, because you've already thought about what can happen. And then also make sure you assign specific team members to monitor those high risk areas. So if you have like an assistant project manager working for you, that they're the one ordering the materials, have them constantly being checking on them and then letting you know what's going on with the communications. Like I said earlier, just because we work in the communications industry doesn't mean we communicate. You've heard me say that many times, many times. Next question number 5. Chuck, how do I handle scope changes without derailing a project? Every project I've ever worked on as a tech in the field or as a project manager, there was change orders. One project in 4 decades did I execute that went off exactly the way that it was estimated. Because what happens is site conditions change, customers' minds change. There's delays. There's change orders with everything. Change orders aren't necessarily a bad thing. The fewer the change orders, the better, because sometimes there is a tipping point where if you have too many change orders, now the customer thinks, oh well, they're price gouging me now. So you got to be careful with change orders. Make sure that you can document them and back them up to say, look, this is a legitimate change order. So the first thing is realize it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And then how are you going to manage it once it happens? That's the key. So when, And the best way to do that second point is to have some type of a formal process that's required to use to process change orders. Identify who's going to be the person who can authorize the change orders. How does that process look like? Who's it going to go through for approval? Who's it going to go through approval within your company? Right. And then also sit down and conduct an analysis on it. If they're adding an additional 15, 20, 30 drops, okay, that's called scope creep. Does that mean that I'm going to get additional time to do this project? Because if you slotted, let's say, I'm just going to pick a thing. Let's say that you originally estimated it to be 10 days, and now because of the extra work, it's going to be 14 days. Is the customer okay? Is it okay to have that date slide back? It may not be, because they may come back and say, no, we schedule movers to be out there on that 10th day. Okay, well, if the schedule can't slide, then what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to put more people on that project. Or your people on that project are going to have to work overtime. Now their cost per hour increases. Again, boom. Think about this when you are processing that change order. It's all those impacts. And then once you've thought about all these processes, communicate that with the stakeholders, primarily at least the customer, but also maybe distribution if they got to be involved in ordering material, maybe the manufacturers, because maybe they might have to make some more product. I mean, I did a project once where we had ordered 100,000 feet of cable tray, 100,000 feet of cable tray. Yeah. And before we did the project, part of my risk assessment was, hey, do you have this in stock? I called them up and they said, yes, we have it in stock. It's on the project floor right now. Great. And then when it came time to order the material, somehow it just kind of like disappeared. Yeah. Next question, Chuck, what role does quality play in project management? Huge role. Huge role. Huge role. Every company, big or small, should have some type of formal QA program. Now, it could be pretty simple or it could be pretty elaborate, but you should have some type of a formal process. And that process is going to make sure that you look at the planning stages all the way to the final delivery. Right? And the benefit of doing a QA program is it's going to find those issues early on in the project. See, a lot of people think, okay, I'll do QAs, I'll do quality inspections, but they do them at the end of the project. Well, how about doing if you got a large project that's going to run 6-8 weeks, do a QA every week, because it's better to find the problem at the beginning when it's small than at the end when it's huge. Give me an example. Did a project one time, doing QA once a week on several projects. I was a project manager in DC. Went out and did a QA, and part of the QA, they were just starting to terminate the jacks. It was a very large project. They had like 5,000 jacks. Just started terminating the jacks. I did the QA, and I always look at 10% of the number of jacks that they had terminated. So I pulled off 10%, and I found that some were terminated T568A and some were terminated T568B. So I quickly identified what was wrong. I went to the foreman, we talked to the crew, and we found out that one of the guys, he just came off of a federal government job and he thought everything was done A. So we fixed it. I said, no. This project's B. Can you imagine how big of a problem that would have been had we waited to the end of the project to find out all those jacks done A? You can do a QA inspection on a project where they just start putting in J hooks. There's things you can look at. Are they staying away from potential sources of EMI? Are they choosing the most clear path? Are they at least 6 inches above the ceiling tiles? There's always something you can inspect during a QA. And then any good QA process is going to also have a way to review that QA with the people on the site and the customer. Okay, there's a really good QA training program out there, a QA training webinar out there. If you're interested in it, it's not mine, it's somebody else's. If you're interested in getting access to that or knowing what that is, shoot me a message and I'll tell you how you can find that 1 hour webinar on how to do QA inspections, because it's pretty important. It's pretty detailed It's a pretty detailed webinar. Holy cow, it's 6:34. Man, I went past my time. We got one more question. We'll go through this one last question. Okay, this question is, what are some best practices for closing a project? This is where a lot of project managers fail. They're good at kicking off the project. They're good at managing it. It's those last little details at the end that gets them hung up, right? How do you resolve the punch list? How do you make sure that all the deliverables are done so you can get that retainage back? We're project managers in the low voltage industry are notorious for dropping the ball in project closing, right? So the first thing is, make sure that you thoroughly review the documents and make sure that you understand what are the deliverables, right? Certified test results, red lines, as-built. Do you have to supply equipment? Does equipment have to be burned in? Do you have to provide after post support, and all that stuff? Make sure you know what all those deliverables are, and anything has to be done to get your final payment. And make sure that at the beginning of the project, when you're having that kickoff meeting with the customer, talk about closing out the project and say, what is it that you want from me to make sure we get at the end of this project so we can say, yes, it's 100% complete, check. Here's the bill, pay me. Right? Outside of that process, make sure that your company has some type of lessons learned where maybe once a quarter, once a year, all the project managers come together in a non-judgmental, non-punitive meeting where you pick your worst project and say, hey, I did this project and this went wrong and that went wrong and that went wrong. And here's how I addressed it. The reason you want to do that is because another project might be sitting at the table and that might be a problem they may come across next year. And they've already seen how you handled it. And they know, oh, that's the best way to handle this. Follow up on those. All right, so there you go. Zeb says, I love PM talk. Yes. Make sure the jails are at least 5 feet apart. Absolutely. And so Zeb, do me a favor, Zeb, shoot me a message and I'll send you the link to that. Okay. All right. We went a little bit over today. I'm sorry for that. I usually try to stop at 6:30 on the note, but we're 7 minutes late. I hope you didn't mind. Remember, knowledge is power.
Today's podcast. We hope you were able to learn something. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. Also, leave a rating so we can help even more people learn about telecommunications. Until next time, be safe.